Hello again, John Hampshire here from JH Coaching, and today I wanted to talk about one of the most common questions I get asked is how to ride faster up hills, how to cycle faster up hills. In most cycling or any endurance sport, there aren't really any big secrets. Despite whatever you might see on YouTube or the internet, there are a few techniques that you can use to make things a little bit easier and give yourself a bit of an edge. But basically, if you're not fit enough, you won't be able to keep up with your friends or keep up with your competitors if you're involved in a race. So why is this and how can you get better? Well, the best way to explain it is using a thing called the power duration curve, which is basically you can maintain a certain power or speed for a given period of time. So what that means is, in simple terms, that you can go really fast for a short amount of time, and you can't go very fast for a long period of time, and there are various periods of time in between. So you could say, if you were sprinting flat out, you might last for 5 seconds. If you're working really hard, you might last for 1 minute. One of the markers people use is VO2 max. You can sustain your speed, your best VO2 max speed, for about 5 minutes. People do a lot of tests and 20-minute tests to test their FTP, and you can sustain your FTP for something like, say, 40 minutes to 70 minutes. So around about an hour is your threshold pace, your threshold heart rate, or your threshold power. So you can draw that on a graph, and it looks a bit like this. So this graph shows, so as you can see, you produce a lot of power for 5 seconds when you're sprinting, and less power for a minute, and then depending on how you and depending on your body type, this curve is a different shape. So it's much steeper if you're good at sprinting, and it's much flatter if you're good at endurance, if you're really sort of an endurance based person. As you can imagine, if you're good at sprinting, you can produce a huge amount of power for a short period of time, but then when it gets longer, you start to struggle. Whereas if you're more sort of endurance based or good at going for a long time, it's quite common that you can't really produce a lot of power for short periods of time. And then around about an hour it starts to drop off again a bit, and that's around your threshold, your FTP, your functional threshold pace, critical power, whatever you want to call it. So what does this mean? Well, if you think about it, if you go out with some friends or you're in a training group for a chain gang, for example, if you have a certain pace or power that you can sustain for 20 minutes or 40 minutes, and you come to a hill at 20 minutes or 40 minutes and you've been riding at that pace, you don't have any energy left to go up the hill faster, so you can't keep up. If your friends are fitter than you, they might not be working as hard for that early part of the ride. Similarly, if the hill's a minute long or 5 minutes long, if you can't produce that power that your friends can produce, then you can't keep up. So you might set off with them, they might start at your 1 minute power or your 1 minute pace. You can last that for 1 minute and then you have to slow down, whereas they can probably, that same pace might be their 5 minute pace. So that's basically it. If you're not fit enough, you won't be able to keep up. So you might say, well, that's all well and good, but what can I do about it? Well, basically you have to get yourself fitter. So think about what you're doing in your week or in your cycling. What cycling are you doing? Are you just going out with your friends at the weekends? And if you're doing that, then if you can add some harder training during the week, then you'll be able to get a bit fitter, and that'll make everything easier. So if you ride at the same pace with the group you normally ride with at the weekends, then that'll be easier for you, and therefore when you get to a hill you can have a bit of reserve, so that means you can keep up better. So like most endurance sports, increasing your aerobic fitness is going to give you the biggest benefit, and unless you're involved in racing or you've got specific areas that you need to work on, then improving your FTP, your threshold pace or threshold power, is going to give you the biggest change. So if you have another look at the curve, if that was your old curve, the black line, and you managed to improve that to your red line, then you can see that if that's your old pace, then you've got that. This is all in reserve here. So when you come to a hill and you have to work a bit harder, you've got that bit of reserve there that you can use to keep up with the group, or even ride away from the group if you're in a competitive mood, or if that's the sort of thing you like to do. You can train at each part of this curve and make this, to some extent, you can make this area go higher, so you can make yourself a bit more of a sprinter, but only to a limited extent, or you can make yourself more of an endurance base. But as you can imagine, just improving this bit here, and then if you wanted to ride for an hour or 2 hours or 3 or whatever, isn't going to make that much difference if you don't change your basic endurance fitness. So what you're trying to do is improve your FTP, your threshold power. And how do you improve your FTP? Well, do some efforts above FTP, harder efforts that you can do maybe during the week when you've got a bit less time, and do some more endurance-based riding at the weekends, which you can do with your friends or you can do on your own. So to improve any part of this curve, you're basically just trying to work around either side of it. So if you wanted to improve your FTP, you need to do some shorter efforts, maybe 5-minute efforts with 5 minutes recovery sort of thing, at a higher intensity, harder, higher power, higher pace, and also some longer training where you build up your aerobic efficiency, which are going to be necessarily less intense. So I've talked quite a bit about using interval training and how you can do that to improve your fitness, so have a look at those sort of videos. I hope this explanation is helpful to you, and if you like these videos, then let me know.